I'm a single man in my mid-30s, and this story took place a few years ago during a particularly rough patch in my life. I had just ended a 5-year relationship with a woman I believed I'd marry and build a future with. To say I was devastated would be putting it mildly. I was completely adrift. The emotional toll was heavy. I spent weeks in a fog, neglecting basic self-care. I'd get up, go to work without speaking to anyone, come home, and collapse into bed. Weekends were somehow worse. I'd forget meals, avoid going outside, and numb myself with endless, meaningless movie marathons. Half the time, I didn't even register what was on screen. But I'll spare you the sob story. Things have improved a lot since then. Still, I can't help but wonder how different my life might have been if things had turned out another way. Anyway, one Saturday night, I was slouched on my bedroom couch, barely moving except to queue up another forgettable film. I genuinely couldn't tell you what was playing. Just another action flick that I'd forget as soon as it ended. For context, my bedroom is on the second floor of my house, and I've got a couch and TV set up in there, so I usually don't watch anything elsewhere. Around 9 p.m., I glanced at my phone and noticed a missed call from my mom, her fourth that day. I didn't ignore her out of malice, but I just didn't have the energy to talk or answer the same questions about whether I'd eaten or stepped outside. Eventually, I exited the movie and clicked on a random horror film with a low-quality thumbnail. It looked like one of those cliché, cheaply made ones. I figured I'd half watch it until I passed out. About 20 minutes in, the film was somehow worse than expected. The dialogue was so poorly mixed I had to crank up the volume just to hear anything, only to get blasted by jarring sound effects seconds later. Still, I didn't bother changing it, probably out of sheer laziness. Then something strange caught my attention. A sharp, metallic clanging sound, like a pipe striking concrete. It didn't fit the visuals. No characters had anything metal, and the setting wasn't even industrial. It wasn't aligned with the jump scares either. The sound just repeated every minute or so. Same volume, same tone, like it had been accidentally looped. The film's overall terrible quality somehow made it harder to turn off. I was partly amused by how bad it was, and partly curious how something that awful would end. Midway through, I got up to use the bathroom and, oddly, paused the movie. When I returned and reached for the remote, the sound rang out again. That same distinct clang. But this time, the movie was paused. I froze, staring at the silent screen. The sound had definitely come from somewhere inside the house. I stayed completely still, hoping I'd imagined it. But about 45 seconds later, it happened again. That identical clang. My instincts kicked in. I jumped up, grabbed a knife from my desk, and checked the entire house. Nothing. No one. No signs of forced entry or anything out of place. As I made my way back upstairs, still on edge, I heard it again. Quieter this time, suggesting it had come from my room. Then it hit me. I'd left a few windows cracked open. Spring had finally arrived, and I'd started letting fresh air in during the evenings. Maybe the noise wasn't inside the house at all. Maybe it had been coming from just outside. Strangely, that idea felt even more disturbing. I walked over and slightly pulled aside the curtain to peek into the backyard. And there it was. One of the deck chairs had been moved into the middle of the yard, and standing beside it was a child, a young boy. I couldn't see his face clearly in the dark, but his size and shape left no doubt. It was a kid. He held what looked like a PVC pipe, which probably explained the clanging. He must have noticed me because the moment I peeked out, he banged the pipe against the chair again. I instinctively backed away from the window, heart racing. I know it sounds irrational, but I was deeply unsettled. What was a child doing alone in my yard? Was he mentally unwell? That would explain some of it. But the thought that he might have been out there for almost an hour chilled me to the bone. Trying to calm down, I considered more logical explanations. Maybe he was lost, wandered off from a neighbor's house, and didn't know how to get back. I couldn't just do nothing, so I went downstairs and made my way to the back door. I even turned on the porch light to help put him at ease, or at least to get a better look. But as I reached for the doorknob, I froze. Something didn't feel right, like I was walking into a trap. If the kid really needed help, wouldn't he knock or call out? And even if he was too scared, would banging a pipe for an hour really be his go-to move? A gut feeling told me not to open the door. I slowly backed away and crept to a small window near the door that overlooked part of the backyard. With the lights off behind him